Okay, so we'll start with just a couple of minutes of watching the breath, letting the mind settle again, generate a motivation, and then we will have the teachings and some time for questions and maybe answers. Let's come back to our motivation. And with a heart of compassion, wanting to alleviate the suffering of sentient beings, and a heart of love, wanting to give them happiness and the causes of happiness, then let's work on transforming our own mind. So at least at the beginning, we stop causing others suffering, and then we can progress to really being of benefit to them, with our ultimate aspiration being full awakening, so that we can do this in relationship to all living beings and lead them all to liberation from samsara's dukkha. Okay, so we'll continue with living with an open heart. And last time, I did the wrong chapter. Well, no, it was the right chapter. It was just out of order. Okay, so this time I'm going to do the right chapter in order. Yeah, so we're on chapter 41 that's called Compassionate Communication. So this is a chapter that I did, and I'll do the next chapter too, which is one that Russell and I did together. Okay, so compassion can be introduced into every aspect of our lives. And since we are in frequent contact with others on a daily basis, communication is perhaps the foremost area in need of compassion. Do you agree? Yeah. Where does much of your confusion and suffering come from in your life? Is it when you're alone, or is it when you're with other people? All the kind sentient beings upon whose life we depend, yeah, we also get irritated and mad at them, right? Because they are not conforming to our diagnosis or prognosis of how things should be. So they're wrong. And when they express their ideas, it's so frustrating, isn't it? Okay, so how do we bring compassion to this situation? Yeah. Of course, we're never the cause of the frustration of other people. You know, we always communicate clearly, appropriately, with kindness, don't we? Yeah. So it's these people that will learn this so that we can then tell them how they can speak better and communicate better, right? Okay. So, yeah, needle everybody you came with and say, look, you should listen to the Dharma talk. Right? You ready to do that? Okay. So without compassion, our communication with others can deteriorate into a litany of complaints and instructions on how others should change so that we'll be happy. True, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, after all, we're right. So they should definitely change. But truly bringing compassion into our communication means that we learn to listen with empathy and respond with true compassion and love, wishing the other person to be free of suffering and its causes and to have happiness and its causes. Okay? So a lot of people talk about love and compassion for ourselves. Yes, that's important. But having it for other people is also important. Maybe more important. Yeah? If we have a kind attitude towards other people, then we will behave better around them, and then we wouldn't feel so much regret about our own actions. What do you think about that? Yeah, do you think if you treated others better, you might feel better about yourself in the process? Think about it. I know for me that's true. Yeah. Okay, so compassionate communication. So, we have to listen to others. Okay, so someone once said we have one mouth and two ears, and that shows what we need to do more of. But of course, we have a big mouth, and so our big mouth often predominates over our two ears. Okay, because as soon as somebody says something we don't like, we better interrupt and correct it. Otherwise, their horrible, incorrect opinion is going to take root and dominate. And the whole world will believe it. So we've got it right away. Yeah? Do you have that tendency in the way you communicate? I know I do, especially in meetings. Yeah? If somebody says something that I disagree with, it's like I've got to interrupt and stop this right away. Otherwise, everybody's going to adopt that horrible idea and the world is going to crumble. Yeah, so I have to step in and correct everybody, as you all know. Okay, but you have to learn to listen too. So compassionate communication begins with the premise that all living beings want to be happy and not suffer. It involves increasing our awareness of the thoughts and feelings that motivate our speech. Okay, not the thoughts and feelings that we're projecting onto the other person, but becoming aware of the thoughts and feelings that motivate our speech and slowing down, listening well, and giving empathy and compassion to ourselves and to others. Okay, to do this, we have to care about others. Okay, if we don't, we won't have the patience to pause and consider what we want to say. So sometimes when we are angry or upset with somebody, it might be somebody we love very much, but at that moment, the anger shuts us off and we feel threatened, and so we don't care so much about them. We care more about protecting ourselves and attacking back, okay, to show that we have some power. But that usually isn't a good technique to bring about harmony. Yeah. It's good. You make some examples in your life when you've acted like that. Okay. So if we don't care about them, we won't have the patience to pause and consider what we want to say. In the next few entries, we'll discuss some approaches for helping ourselves communicate compassionately. A number of these are adapted from Marshall Rosenberg's work in nonviolent communication, which we practice here at the Abbey, and I highly recommend to people. It's really very good. So here's the reflection with this chapter. It's called Bringing Compassion to Our Communication. Based on what you've learned so far, consider some ways you could bring compassion into your communications and interactions with others. Bring to mind a recent tense interaction with another person. Okay, you have one in mind? Could happen this morning, yesterday? Yeah? Okay, let me remember one. Okay, then using your imagination, picture yourself interacting with this person in a kind, empathic, and compassionate manner. Okay, so imagine that situation, but you're stopping and listening. You're not dumping your anger on them. There's enough space in your mind to hear what they're saying. Even if you disagree with it, there's enough space in your mind to hear it and to accept that that is that person's idea right at this present moment. And then imagine how this might change the way the situation unfolds. So that same situation in which you got irritated and said something mean back, imagine that your mind instead had compassion and you were in touch with the affection that you felt for the other person, or at least the respect for them being a living being, and that you communicated in a different way, then how would that situation have unfolded? So we can use our imaginations in this way before an interaction actually happens as well, practicing what we might feel and say to prepare ourselves for conversations that might be difficult. Okay? So we went through that exercise rather quickly, but it's something to bring into your meditation, okay, and play out those scenes in your imagination, because when you do, you find a way to have handled the situations in the past that you don't feel so good about, yeah, and you really use your imagination to think of having another thought or feeling in yourself and acting towards the other person in a different way. And when you do act in a different way, then of course how they respond is going to be different. Okay, so it's a very good exercise. And when you think you're going to go into a difficult situation, like you have a meeting with, so-and-so today, and you're going to be, and this person maybe has a habit of exploding over a certain thing, or you have a habit of exploding when you're with that person, then it's very good to, in your mind, rehearse the situation before and think of, cultivate an attitude of respect and compassion for that person, and imagine yourself acting in that way when you encounter them. Then when you actually encounter them, you have some preparation in your own mind, something to rely on that will hopefully stop the knee-jerk reaction that we usually have when there's conflict, which is either attack back or escape, fight or flight. Okay, then chapter 42 is called Describing Situations Accurately. This is an interesting one, okay? So, I did this one too. Oh, I did this one. Yeah, the next one Russell and I collaborated on. This one's mine. Actually, it's plagiarized from Marshall Rosenberg, but we won't tell anybody. Okay, so the chapter is called Describing Situations Accurately. So many different mental experiences shape how we experience situations. Some of these involve sensory information coming in through our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body. Okay, so what we perceive with our five senses will influence how we experience a situation. And then other processes involve thoughts, images, assumptions, or inferences based on what we perceive through our senses. How about projections, too? Okay, so we very seldom experience a situation freshly. Okay, usually we'll have some sense data, and that will remind us of something in the past. And then the feeling or the image we had of the past event will come into mind. And we will often react to the present situation in the same way that we reacted to the past event. Okay, is this clear? Yeah. And so we think, again, that we're reacting to an external objective situation, but actually we're reacting to a mental image in our mind that we are superimposing on this situation. Okay. So I can, for example, when I was a kid, the way I got disciplined was I got yelled at. So I hate when people scream because that was the main way I got disciplined. Yeah. And it wasn't just one scream and finish. It was, my mom is a screamer. Okay. And you hear about it for a long time. Yeah. She doesn't let up easily. So because of that, when I'm in situations where people start screaming, I immediately remember how I felt in that situation, which is completely powerless. I mean, if you knew my mom, you cannot get a word in edgewise. And even if you could, you don't. If you value your life, okay? You do not say anything. You just stand there. So, I take that experience, and then when I hear people yelling now, again, I just freeze, and then I try and exit the situation as soon as I possibly can, feeling, there's no other way for me to handle it because I can't say anything anyway. Okay, now all that is my superimposition on the present situation. Because I don't really know why the other person's screaming. I just automatically assume that they're screaming at me. And I automatically assume that there's nothing I can do. I just have to shut up and take it. Okay? And that's all coming from my side. That's not coming from the other person. Yeah. They may actually be upset about something that happened before we were talking. Okay, and their anger just happened to explode in front of me. And it may not be about me at all. Okay, and even if it is about me, and I did something they don't like, why do I have to get so upset about it? Okay, why do I have to freeze? Why is, that's just a habit of mine. That's not inherent in the situation itself. Okay, so we often just project so much interpretation, This person doesn't understand me. They're mad at me. They want to hurt me. Yeah, and that may not at all be the situation. And even if it is, why do I need to have my own mind disturbed by that? Yeah? Such that I just go away, close the door, don't talk to anybody, and, all the time wait for somebody to come and say, are you upset? Are you angry? No, get away! But what I really want is for people to come and check on me. But I chase them away when they do. Okay? So, this is like, oh my goodness, do I have to really do all that again and again and again and again in samsara? It's a behavior that doesn't accomplish my own purposes. Yeah, it's shooting myself in the foot. Okay, but what I'm getting at, okay, and if you studied low-rig mind and its awareness, and you've studied the difference between direct perception and conceptual mind, yeah, and how the conceptual mind functions, and its good attributes and its negative attributes, then you can really see this play out in your life. That low-rig, the text on mind and awareness, isn't just some intellectual explanation of our mind. It actually is, when we check, at least how my mind is. I don't know about your mind. Okay. So describing a situation accurately, I didn't finish that. Okay. Since the way we filter information is influenced by our previous experiences, as well as by the emotions we're feeling at the moment, we can easily be mistaken about others' actions and motivations, believing our ideas and our opinions are accurate descriptions of reality. Yeah, because we always perceive things accurately, right? Yeah. Describing a situation accurately is actually harder than it may seem. Yeah, what we believe to be an objective description often turns out to be a series of interpretations and projections, many of which bear little resemblance to what is actually going on. Okay. Which is why sometimes, we're upset about something and we say it to the other person we're upset with, and they're very puzzled. They don't understand what's going on because to them, the situation looked completely different. Okay, so here it may be useful to use Joan's example of a situation she experienced with a friend at a small social gathering. Okay, so to see if this has ever happened, something similar has ever happened to you. So Joan says, when I came in, my friend was happily chatting with a good-looking man. She saw me come in, and she knew I was nervous because I didn't know many people there. Yet she ignored me. Instead of greeting me, she was incredibly rude and inconsiderate and kept talking to this man as if I weren't there. Okay? Now, you ever felt anything similar? Okay. So there are a lot of loaded words in Chodron's description that go beyond simply describing the situation. When we read that, it sounds like that's an objective reality. Okay? But if we look back and look at the words, there's a lot of projection, there's a lot of emotionally loaded words and assumptions, okay, that go beyond describing the situation, embellishing it with her interpretation of what happened and the assumptions that she made about her friend's motivation. Her friend was rude, her friend was inconsiderate, her friend was more interested in that good-looking man than in her, who was her longtime friend. Oh, what kind of loyalty she threw out the window to me, her long-term friend, by paying more attention to that creepy guy, even though he was good-looking. Okay, so Joan became so worked up about what she thought had happened that it was hard for her to hear or consider any other interpretations. However, she knew she was miserable, and so she decided to try the nonviolent communication approach, which begins with describing just the bare facts of the situation to oneself. After much whittling away of the projections and assumptions, her story boiled down to, and I'm not going to tell you, let's do this as a group. I'm going to read what she read, and you tell me whenever you catch an assumption, an emotionally loaded word, okay, an opinion. Okay, so when I came in, my friend was happily chatting with a good-looking man. Yeah, happily. Good-looking. Okay, so already, first sentence, 2 projections. Yeah. For all we know, it could have been her brother. Yeah? Okay. She saw me come in and knew I was nervous because I didn't know many people there. Well, is that emotionally loaded? She saw me come in? What? Joan didn't come in? Oh, that's true. Okay. She may not have seen it. Okay. But she saw me come in and knew I was nervous. That's an assumption. Because I didn't know many people there. That's an assumption also. Okay. Yet she ignored me. That's a projection, isn't it? Yeah, based on assuming that she saw me, she knew I didn't know many people, she knew I was nervous, and the underlying message is she didn't care about me, and therefore I am worthless. That isn't even written here, but that's the subtext, isn't it? Yeah, my best friend betrayed me because I am worthless. I can't trust any people. That's a pretty big subtext to this, isn't it? Okay. Instead of greeting me, she was incredibly rude and inconsiderate. Yeah, a little bit of emotionally loaded language and judgment, and kept talking to this man as if I weren't there. Also, assumption that she, is just deliberately talking to this man, and deliberately ignoring me. And then again, the subtext is, because I don't matter, I'm worthless, nobody loves me, nobody cares about me. And that's why this whole thing happened. Okay, there were like, 1, 2, 3 sentences in her description. And she was really worked up about the whole thing. Okay? Yeah?
That's a really good example of the self-centered attitude. It sees everything in terms of how it relates to me. Exactly. And people become everything just how it relates to me.
Yep. Yeah, everything's about me. Okay, let's go back now. Here. Okay, so after much whittling away of projections and assumptions, her story boiled down to, I walked in the room, my friend was talking to someone, and continued the conversation. That's all that actually happened. Huh?
Those are very facts.
Yeah, that's the factual thing of what happened. I walked in the room. Okay, my friend was talking to somebody, and she kept talking to that person. All the rest is my namtok. Namtok is a Tibetan word for conceptualization, projection, elaboration, garbage, that we impute. Okay. All the rest of that was made up by Joan's mind, and look how miserable she became because of it. Yeah. And can you imagine her going up to her friend and saying this, I went to this party, I walked in the door, you're talking to this guy who's really good looking, you're so involved in the conversation. I don't know many people there. Yeah, and you're my best friend, and why don't you come talk to me and introduce me to some people instead of ignoring me? You are so rude and inconsiderate, and I can't count on you for anything anymore because you just completely abandoned me and left me feeling isolated in that big room with all those other people who know each other and are talking to each other, and I'm just standing there feeling out of it. Okay, now imagine that you're Joan's friend and somebody says that to you. Okay, what are you thinking as Joan's friend? Exactly. What? What's going on? Yeah. And then you try and explain, actually, that was my brother, and I didn't even see you come in the room. And then they go, yes, you did. You saw me come in that room, I'm certain, because you looked away from him a little bit. Yeah. So so now, although, the friend is trying to clarify the facts of the situation, Joan won't accept them at all. She's so imbued with her interpretation that she thinks is factual, that even the friend is trying to explain just the facts, and she rejects it. Yeah. What does the friend do then? What do you do? What can you say to somebody when they're in that mental state? Yeah. The psychologists have a term for this. It's called the refractory period. When somebody is so stuck in their image and view of what happened that they cannot take in any information that disagrees with that. Okay. That refractory period may last 10 minutes. It may last a few days. It may last weeks or months to the point that Joan just cuts off the friendship completely and never speaks to her friend ever again. Yeah. Interesting, isn't it? How much has this happened in our life? Yeah. And how much have we suffered and caused other people to suffer because of this? So this is, okay, when we see this in ourselves, we do not blame ourselves. Yeah. We say, my mind was overtaken by afflictions at that moment. The afflictions are my enemy. Okay, so I have to work on my afflictions and learn to pause and not just so quickly impute things on a situation. Yeah, because as soon as I impute things, my afflictions get triggered. And, you know, I create a situation that isn't actually happening. And then I suffer. And I want myself to be happy. So I'm going to slow down and really watch when my mind starts story writing and stop it. Yeah? Okay. So Joan was shocked to discover that, in fact, that's all that happened. Was her friend walked into the room. She walked into the room. Her friend was talking to somebody and kept talking to that person. That's all. So Joan was shocked to discover that was the facts of the situation. And all the rest was her story writing. This realization immediately deflated her anger. It was like, oh, okay. Nothing to be angry at here. And she put it down. You know, some people may even see that, but they're so entrenched in their story that even though they say, yeah, that's all that happened, one part of their mind is going, yes, but, and then puts all that projection right back on and is miserable again. Okay. So we may have to really work at, recognizing the story we make up and work at dropping it. Yeah? The value of trying to describe just the facts is that it stops us from creating threatening fantasies, dwelling on what happened, and making assumptions about what we think the other person's motivation was or how his or her mind works. By focusing on the facts, we often come to see that nothing happened that was worth getting worked up about. Isn't that a relief? Yeah. Actually, I think, when I'm worked up about something and then I realize I'm wrong, that's actually a relief. That means I don't need to be worked up so much about it now. I can drop my anger and relax. And I can say I'm wrong. I think saying I'm wrong is kind of a relief. Because if I'm right, then the situation is really screwed up. Yeah. But if I'm wrong, then there's nothing that really happened for me to get upset about, and that's a relief. Mm-hmm.
on some level, it seems as if, like, almost ridiculous that the friend would have to explain himself, you know. But on another level, like, what then would have been the best way for the friend to handle it? And, you know, like, what could she have said so she doesn't become offended too? Like, she could easily say, she could have gotten offended easily.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I think all the friend can do is just try and clarify the facts of the situation. And if Joan accepts that, good. And if Joan doesn't accept it, there's not much she can do. Yeah. She could, what some people often do is, well, I'm sorry you got offended. Okay. But, whether the other person accepts that or not. And, it's when you say, I'm sorry you got offended, you're not taking any responsibility yourself for being the offensive one. You're saying, I'm sorry you got offended. So Joan could react with, oh, you're sorry I got offended? Well, you were the one who offended me. And it starts with you. So the thing is, when somebody is in a mood like that, sometimes, you can do 3 cartwheels and jump to the moon. And basically what you have to do is just wait. Be kind. Don't aggravate the person anymore. Yeah, wait until maybe they settle down and then you can talk about it. I don't know. Anybody else have ideas how you could handle it? Yeah.
This person obviously needs some empathy. So 2 things could happen. You could say, wow, you sound really upset and I want to hear what your experience is. Or you could say, this relationship is very important to me and I want to hear what you have to say, but I'm not sure right now is the best time to have the conversation.
Oh, that's good. That's very good. Yeah. What Joan's friend could say. Yeah. So to say this relationship is important to me, how you feel is important to me. I want to talk about it and understand what you're feeling, but maybe now isn't the best time. Yeah. Yeah, very good. Thank you. Remind me of that next time. The next time I throw my hands up and just go, this person, I can't get through to them. Okay, I'll remind you. You remind me. And when it happens with each other, the rest of the community better remind both of us. Okay. Okay, here's the reflection. Recall a recent situation in which you were upset. Okay, you got one? Write down a description of what happened, leaving out any words that describe the possible motivations of the other person, such as they purposely irritated me. On purpose, they said that because they knew I'm sensitive. Okay. Any emotive words, like they gave me a dirty look. Yeah, they ignored me. They sneered at me. Or any words that describe what was happening, such as shout or gloated. Okay. Just write down who did what and the exact words someone said, if you can remember them. Often, when we get triggered, we can't even remember the exact words the other person said. Yeah. We will write down what we think they said, and it's loaded with emotive words and facts in quotation marks, alternative facts that aren't true at all, and yet that's what we think the other person said. And it's not what they said at all. Okay. And then, in what way does the situation appear differently to you now? And do you feel the same way about it? So this can be the discussion group exercise, doing that and sharing what you find. Yeah. I went in, and Upekkha was lying by the front door, snoozing like he usually is, waiting for Venerable Thubten to come in. And I loved that kitty, and I bent down to pet him, to show my affection for him, and he got up and walked away. Every time I go to pet him, he gets up and walks away. Once in a while, I can pick him up, but as soon as I pick him up, after 2 seconds, or even 1 second, he squirms and wants to be put down. So even the cats around here can't stand me. I just don't fit in this community at all. You know, really, if the cats don't like me and they ignore me and, you know, deliberately kind of scorn me and won't let me pet them, like, you know, what hope do I have for the people here? I really am worthless. Where's the Kleenex? There's only one left. You use them all up. Deliberately, so that I wouldn't have enough when I start crying. Oh. Okay. So, questions, comments? Who's buying stock in tissue companies?
I think it's just so clear in the years that I've been involved with this community. I am so aware of the suffering that I have caused myself over and over and over in those stories that we make up. Mm-hmm. And, you know, as I was watching you kind of play the victim, you know, and then watching everyone watch you, and then thinking too what goes on in everyone's mind here, right? It's all of us.
It's all of us.
And it's just that awareness is so powerful in terms of what is really true. And if we pause long enough, and your other point of how when someone gets so wrapped in it, you can't communicate. It's like Venerable Thubten saying, you know, maybe we can have this conversation later, because whatever you would even try to say, and you can even say it to yourself, you know, I may not be able to even hear my own compassion to myself. I've got to take a break.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then when you take a break, to say, you know, I'm feeling quite emotional now, I need a break, I'll come back afterwards, instead of just disappearing. So
since you mentioned it, was it Lojong or
thought training?
Low rig. Thank you.
Okay.
So it sounds to me like the example in that book was a conceptual perception. Mm-hmm. So what might be an example of a direct perception? Would it be the bare facts, or what? I mean, can you? Yeah, the bare perception would be, for example, my visual consciousness seeing the other person in the room. Okay. So that's just the bare perception. Okay. I'm seeing the color and shape. Maybe I hear sound, like, you know, I know people are talking. I can't make out their words, but I hear sound. So that's just my audio consciousness hearing the sound. So that's all. Then what usually happens is that data goes into the mental consciousness, and we start conceptualizing about it, interpreting it, you know, and so on. So there are, you know, we need the conceptualization to function in life, okay?
when you're doing the dishes, you need to look and see the dirt and then say, oh, I washed that, but it's still dirty. I need to wash it again. Okay. So you need the conceptual mind to know that you got to wash the dirt again. But our problem is coming when the conceptual mind becomes our projections and assumptions and stories, often based on previous things, or sometimes not even based on something that happened before, but something our mind is concocting at this very moment.
I want to digress too much, but then, when one achieves awakening or enlightenment, then is there no conceptual mind? Because if our true nature is pure awareness, I would think that there's no conceptual mind.
Yeah, Buddhists don't have conceptual mind. Yeah, but they do understand things clearly without projection. Okay, so, they know emptiness all the time, and they know emptiness non-conceptually. They also know all conventional phenomena, but again, without the conceptual overlay that we often have on them. How that exactly would be like, ask a Buddha. Okay? It's kind of sometimes a bit difficult to imagine, that we wouldn't even have the concept of giving a name to that object.
Projections.
Yeah, forget about the projections. Buddha's not going to have the projection, but even just giving the name, oh, that is so-and-so. Yeah. Because usually naming objects involves the conceptual mind. Yeah, so how a Buddha does that, that's an ask a Buddha question. Okay. Uh-huh.
I think it's really important how you mentioned that, like, subtext. It's like the story that we tell ourselves about ourselves, and it's like that's the lens through which we see situations. And I don't think it's mentioned there, but that's like really key to know within ourselves, because those are like our buttons. How do we see things?
Right.
And then how can we start to take that apart?
Yeah. Yeah. Because that's often, like you said, it's just the lens, So everything is viewed through that colored lens, Yeah. And so the one level is there's a real me. And then the second level is, and everything is about that real me. And then the third level is, this is what people think and feel about me because, this is who I am. This is my identity. Yeah, I am this worthless scum. Yeah, and that's why everybody treats me like that. And so you notice all these loaded words. I am worthless scum. Okay. Everybody treats me that way. Really? Everybody? No, it's only Upeka. My tree's nice to me. Okay. Yeah. So the way we describe things to ourselves, the conclusions we come to are often with such extreme language that they couldn't possibly be true. Okay. If we say to ourselves, I'm worthless scum, who on this planet is worthless scum? Yeah? Who? Name one person. Now, you may say, oh, well, Joseph Stalin or, Mao Zedong or Adolf Hitler. But not everybody in the world saw them that way. And they're a sentient being with the Buddha nature. How could they be worthless scum if they have the Buddha nature? Yeah. So what am I projecting on other people? All of this is just my garbage. Yeah. No sentient being is worthless scum. No sentient being is impossible and hopeless and inherently flawed. Yeah. These are all things that we make up and impute on ourselves. And then we believe these stupidagios. Yeah, and they're completely wrong. Now she's going to defend Upekkha. Just watch.
No, I'm not. What this chapter also gets at, which is very profound, is the fact that, all of us think we know the people that we're around, our family. And in fact, I know so little about every single person in this room, the people I live with, my sister. It's just based on the past, and they're changing moment by moment. But my mind fixates on some small, tiny part. That is very disturbing, that habit.
It is, isn't it? Because nobody remains the same. They're changing all the time. And like you said, we pick out one moment in the past, project something onto it, and then thinks that's who that person is. Yeah. And then we react to the image we've created about them, and then we wonder why we're unhappy and why we don't get along with that person. Yeah?